mentioned the Paleo Solution book already. That was a New York Times bestseller, and this one, the Wired to Eat book, is already, I think it's number 6 as far as the weight loss. I think they always have to I guess, like stereotype the books. But he's already way up there on the list, and the book's been out for less than a month. So. Also, if you're a podcaster, he does podcasts, also appropriately called the Paleo Solution. He studied under who I say the godfather of paleo is, Warren Purdane. And, anybody read that article last night? If you read that, some of this stuff will be really familiar. To be honest with you, a lot of it. Okay? To err as humans, go divine, forgive divine. Anybody familiar with that quote? Anybody know whose quote that is? It's kind of ironic. I was planning to use this and edit the words to manipulate it to my purposes. It's Alexander Pope. He was a poet, 1600s. Ironically, he died at 54 from tuberculosis. The ironic part of that is he died from tuberculosis. Which is, anybody know what kind of disease that is? Autoimmune. Or it's starting to show that it's related to autoimmune. I didn't know that, and I put the quote and I started reading about it, and I wonder how he died. And I thought, well, that's pretty poetic. Here's the news. Maybe not news. Human beings, sapiens, are the most adaptable organism on the planet. That's how we kind of control things, right? We can communicate, we have language, we have memory, we can work in a collective unit better than, say, a chimpanzee, maybe. It's kind of a double-edged sword, though, because since the agricultural revolution, in essence, the last 10,000 years, the changes that we've been able to enact in our environment and our lifestyle have left us ill-prepared, if you will, to deal with all of the ills of society now. Okay? So, if you feel like you have a tendency to overeat, if you feel like you have a tendency to eat fast food, sugar, things that we may condemn, it's not that big of a deal. It is a big deal, but awareness is number one, the first step. You guys have probably seen that picture before. It's kind of like the evolution of man, where he became a man and then became a farmer. I don't know if the guy who started from the right's carrying a hoe, looks like. And then the Industrial Revolution, the guy's carrying a jackhammer, and now we're in this information age. Who has a posture like this more times than not? We're on our phone, we're typing on a computer. Lots of things to discuss here and unpack. But, who's heard this before? That first one, eat less, move more. And everything in moderation, right? That's the easiest advice the doctor can give, or a friend can give, or someone who's healthy can give someone else. But, as you guys know, societally, we're sicker than we've ever been. In fact, has anybody read the book Sapiens by chance? Paul Bryan, history. This isn't a Rob Wolf quote, but I thought it was very much appropriate. For the first time in the history of the world, we are dying more often from eating too much than from eating too little. That made my head explode when I started thinking, gosh, what in the world happens? I had a little cartoon. By the way, I'm trying to make this as entertaining as I can. Have you guys ever seen that cartoon before? The man kind of looks like it's like a triangle. I'm a big fan of Joel Salatin, and that's kind of another tangent, but he's a farmer and big time subsistence farming, and he calls the FDA the FDA, and he calls USDA the USDA, because obviously the things that they're promoting and preaching lend themselves more to a guy that looks like the actual triangle. Okay? So, what gives? Well, I kind of mentioned this before. Here's a fun fact, or maybe a little quiz for you guys. Hypochondria. You guys heard of that? Hypochondriac, somebody who thinks they're sick. Rob Wolf's a geek. I consider myself a camp geek as well. And he kind of elaborates on the etymology or the origins of the word hypochondria, which I thought was really interesting. Does anybody know what hypochondriac means, other than someone who thinks they're sick? If you break down the pieces of the word, it simply means a place underneath the rib cage. That was the origin of the word. AKA, what's this? Your gut, right? Now, anecdotally, most degenerative diseases can be tied back to the way that we digest our food or our gut health. Autoimmunity, we mentioned this earlier. Does anybody know what autoimmunity means? Non-doctors? An autoimmune disease. What does that mean in simple, zoomed out terms? Does anybody know?
It's your body kind of immune system.
Absolutely. It's your body's immune system turning on itself. So it's like I'm destroying myself from the inside out. Okay? So a lot of those types of diseases correlate or causate to the way that we eat. Okay? You guys have heard of all these things. Obesity, diabetes, particularly type 2. Is anybody here diabetic? Type 1. Okay. So yours is a different story. So take all this with a grain of salt. Still be good for you, but there's a different approach that we can take. IBS, who knows what that is? Not annoying. Irritable bowel, RA, rheumatoid arthritis, MS, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, all these things are autoimmune diseases where your immune system actually just says, I don't know what you're thinking about doing, but we're doing something totally different. Okay? So, these changes in our gut, or this dysregulation of our gut health, is tied mostly to the increase in cardiovascular disease, neurodegeneration, etc., etc. Make sense? You guys ever heard of syndrome X and metabolic syndrome? It's kind of this like big overarching umbrella descriptor for anything that's autoimmune. If you read the article that I posted last night, you may recognize that picture. A couple years ago, Steve and I and Justin traveled down to Austin, Texas, ate some non-paleo food, but went to this event called Paleo FX, which is like kind of ironic in itself, right? Which is a big event where all the talking heads in the paleo world come together and present what I thought was some vital information. So in 2015, we were lucky to attend. In 2015, when we came home, we started writing a bunch of articles to try to better inform you guys. This, in my opinion, I haven't talked to Rob personally about the impetus for this book, but this presentation, or a picture from this presentation, is almost a mirror image of this book, obviously elaborated in, 100,000 words or so. However, his argument is, we are wired to eat, hence the name of the book. If you're not fat, if you're not sick, if you're not diabetic, genetically speaking, you've missed the ship. There's something you're doing wrong as a human being, the way that you're programmed genetically. And in his words, we are wired to eat nearly everything that's not nailed down. So if it's not nailed down, I'll have it. That cake over there not nailed down, I'll have it. This is achieved through two strategies, or two character traits, if you will. And again, if you read the article last night, you guys remember optimal foraging strategy, or OFS, or bowel fatigue? You guys remember any of those terms? Anybody? It's okay, so yeah. Okay, so let's talk about it. Let's dig in. Optimal foraging strategy. You guys remember the eat less, move more mantra? Guess what? We're programmed to do the exact opposite. We're programmed to move less and eat more. So the idea here is, if you are a living, breathing, moving animal, and you exist now, you fall under this rule. All critters exist because of this general law. The idea is to eat as much as we can while minimizing the energy that we spend. You guys have heard me talk about stuff being expensive energy-wise. This is truly the fatale moment. So we are programmed not to eat less and be sustainable and forego in a divine way. We're programmed to eat as much as we can because we don't know where that next meal will be coming from. Except now, we know always where the next meal comes from. At least here in the Western world generally. Has anybody ever heard the term hyperpalatability? This is an interesting word. You can wager a guess. Palatability means taste. Hyper means lots of it, right? Like hyper, but per se. So hyperpalatability, Rob uses a good example on social media. I don't think he actually put this in the book. How many marshmallows could you eat? Anybody? Plain marshmallows. Think you eat a ton of them? Probably not, because they kind of fill you up. What happens if we plug a stick into it, put it over the fire, and give it a good toast? How many could you eat then? Because the texture changes, right? Because you have like this crispy, toasty outside, it's a little gooey, and the next layer, and in the middle, it's a bit chewy. So you're experiencing three different textures, or flavors, if you will. Now what happens if you put it between graham crackers? Could you eat more of them? What if we put chocolate on top of it, then put it between graham crackers? And then, here's where it becomes really fun. What if you put drizzled caramel, a little bit of salt on top of it? How many could you eat then? Sounds like an ice cream, right? Where's Davey? I'm not eating ice cream. Okay, so hyperpalatability just simply describes the state of food that is enriched and enhanced. So you can think of like salty and crunchy potato chips. You can think of cold, sweet, creamy ice cream. And all these descriptors for food. Guess what? Grocery stores are filled with this type of food. 50,000 items on average in every grocery store. find some stuff in there that would appeal to your inner ape? Good chance. Fast food, you don't have to say. You know, that stuff tastes ridiculous, and we all know why. Now, bottom right is a chart that I Googled and found that I can't explain. But that's supposed to represent optimal foraging. Okay? So take that in, and if you can explain it to me, please do. Palate fatigue. I mentioned that one too. So we've talked about how we're designed to walk around and find things that are nutrient rich and move as little as possible. I think the analogy I used in the article was like pushing the sled around all day, digging up roots, tubes, and berries. Who would want to do that? It's expensive for me. I won't exist long enough to do that because it takes more energy to gather than I'm gaining on what I'm eating. Okay? Here's the second piece of that, second wrinkle, palate fatigue. It's a $100 word for literally, I'm tired of this taste. Right? Tastes good to us, eventually it becomes boring, and it's like there's a rapper, famous rapper, I don't know who it is, with JoJo is here, who says, on to the next one. Anybody know that song? On to the, it's like over and over and over and over. I like the next song. Can anybody wager a guess without reading why we are wired with this palatal fatigue, or this nature, it's innate nature for us to not want to eat the exact same thing all the time? Yeah. Can you imagine eating the same meal every day ad nauseum? Number one, it wouldn't taste good. Maybe you could survive. But number two, problem man would run into these bounties or these big trucks of food, if you will, and it could mean feast or it could also mean disaster. Because of what? Every food has a little bit of something that could maybe be detrimental. Okay, so for example, you can read that toxins exist in harmless sources like apples, carrots, and even blueberries. Who would have known? Water, if you will. Drink too much water, you drown, right? Same principle. Okay, so if we overconsumed pre-agricultural revolution, there's a good chance we might not make it. We might not reproduce. We couldn't generate a whole other generation. And anybody watch Man vs. Food? This is a really good analogy.
Yeah.
So that guy's name's Adam Richman, and Rob actually cites this particular episode in his book. That is 8 pounds of ice cream. Could we, even with this hyperpalatability, could you eat 8 pounds of ice cream? That's insane. So he describes this episode, Adam's just plugging away, he's 3-4 pounds in, which is not even halfway. And you can see him starting to slow, he's a little flush, he's pushing back, and he does something that's unthinkable. What do you guys think he does? He asks for French fries. So he's eating all this sweet, savory, rich, and he's like, gosh, I'm tired of this taste. My body's telling me this is enough. I'm programmed not to eat this much. And he orders some salty, crunchy, hot French fries. And what he does is he kind of circumnavigates this natural tendency that we have to protect ourselves from overeating. And guess what? He finishes the whole thing because he has salty, crunchy, completely different flavor, just as hyperpalatable. Okay, and then of course he has the extended belly. So literally, we are professional eaters now. We rewire ourselves in that way. Does that make sense? So guess what? Not your fault. We're made to be this way. Again, I'm no endocrinologist, and I'm definitely not an MD. But theoretically, we should be able to control our appetite with our hormones. You guys think you can do that? Probably not. Not always. Appetite should be controlled, quote marks, by the level of body fat that we currently hold. Relatively high level body fat should, in quotations, suppress our appetite. I read a study, and I was talking to some of you guys about this a few weeks ago. Has anyone ever read about the gentleman in the 1960s who fasted for 382 days? This is real life. Fasted for 382 days. He lost something like 180 pounds. But he started over 400 pounds. So he kind of rewired himself, if you will, over the course of that 382 days because he had all that reserve. He had all that energy reserve inside of him that his body eventually started using because that's the way we're designed. This all makes sense, right? If we have low levels of body fat, we should eat a lot because we don't have those banks of energy that we can live on in times of pain. Does that make sense? Okay? Here's the problem though. Fast forward 10,000 years. Hyperpalatable food. We talked about that, right? We haven't talked about sleep. We haven't talked about stress. kind of touched on what we call GI problems, which is gastrointestinal, meaning inflammation, food that we're eating is not really agreeing with us. You know what I mean? I know. And then voila, normal function, deregulated. It's a very complex story, but I don't want to dig into all the science because again, I'm not qualified to do that. If you really want to dig into it, Rob does a great job. Does that make sense? Any questions on that, guys? This is a shameless plug for myself. Carry the fire, but we need to carry the metabolic fire. Anybody read that article, Carry the Fire? Okay. No relation to this. Just a side line. How do we fix ourselves? And this is a direct quote from Ron. I'll paraphrase the last part, but one could literally spend billions of dollars on research and not come up with a better health recommendation than eat whole, unprocessed foods, move a lot, and do it in the sun, sleep like you're on vacation, and surround yourself with loving people. You can kind of partition that or fraction that into really 4 pillars of how to heal ourselves. Number 1, and this is the low-hanging fruit, I'll use the pun, it's easy to use, low-hanging fruit, easy for me to use. Nutrition. Figuring out how to eat better. Figure out how to eat so that it serves us as opposed to works against us. Movement. You guys are in the gym. You're already doing most of that already. You'll hopefully see that we connect the dots blindly at that. Recovery, sleep, community. We're in community too. So a lot of these dots are connected for you guys. I think there are just a few fires that we can put out. But Galen, aren't we genetically doomed? Aren't we programmed to eat? Aren't we designed by nature right now to fail? Yes and no, not quite, okay? Here's how we wrestle back control from our lizard brain, if you will, that wants us to eat all the time. We control the information that we have inside of our body. We do that through food choice. And, or also, correlated, we control our blood sugar, okay? Which is huge for you, Teresa, right? Blood sugar, absolutely, okay? So, we can reduce our likelihood of developing all these autoimmune diseases. Neurodegeneration, meaning our nerves don't work as well. Autoimmunity, cancer, the worst. Even asthma. Just has asthma. Does it help you when you eat cleaner?
Oh, Lord,
Yes. It is clear from what we've learned that the habits that improve our health, or the behaviors that improve our health, tie directly to our ability to lose weight and keep it off. Okay, so it's like one begets the other. Which came first, chicken or the egg? Which came first, the abs or the leanness? They're tied together, okay? Where do we begin? Nutrition. Where do we begin? I thought that was a great picture. Literally starting in the belly of the beast. The belly of the beast. If we can fix the belly, we will unleash our beast. Okay? I don't know what that cartoon is, but I thought it was perfect. You're here. We're right in the belly. We're beginning from the inside. Work our way out. Where do you start? You start, in my opinion, number 1, and Rob's. I won't say it's only my opinion. You start by healing your gut. And then again, if you read the article, you have to kind of reframe these relationships that we have with food. And in fact, I would say in the relationships, time to break up. And we do all this through following a paleo model. Okay? So let's dig into nutrition. Let's really focus on how nutrients, we absorb or better absorb the food that we're eating. Have you ever eaten? Not looking at you, Iris, and feel like you've eaten food, but there's no way I digested that. It just went straight through. We had this conversation yesterday. Okay? We talked about critters. We talked about how we all have this optimal foraging strategy. What does that mean, guys? We're wired to eat more, move less, right? Now, plants just kind of hanging out, right? They can't really move around, but what they needed to do to survive is develop this technique called anti-predation, which means I've evolved as a plant. I don't want Mr. Bird or Mr. Fox or bear, a foraging animal, to come and eat me until I no longer exist. So I had to develop as a plant a way to survive. We talked about toxins in strawberries and in carrots and things of that nature. Plants have these. Now, they're not always toxic levels. However, a lot of the food that we eat has a toxin in it of some sort. You guys have heard about gluten. That's an easy one. Legumes or beans have anti-nutrients in them. So has anybody ever had stomach disruption from eating beans? Dairy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? And in fact, we didn't consume, as Homo sapien, we didn't consume dairy until agricultural revolution. Okay? So again, and if you look at the big spectrum of time, it's only been a fraction of the time that we've really been eating dairy or dairy type foods. These toxins, these anti-nutrients, damage through this thing called silent inflammation, or the silent killer, the lining of our gut. Anybody know what lives inside your gut?
Bacteria.
Yeah, bacteria. And Rob points this out in the book. I thought it was really interesting. We have an entry port and we have an exit port, and that the world lives in there. It's not us, right? I thought that was really cool. It's like we have a hole that runs all the way through us. It's not really us. But everything that's inside that controls our ability to absorb our food, controls our ability to respond to the food that we're eating. And if it's way off kilter, have you guys ever heard of leaky gut? Exactly what it sounds like. Parts of your food seep into your body. You can be septic in a long way. That's really, really, really far on the other side of the spectrum. Okay?
Are lentils in with the legumes?
Yes and no, but we can talk about ways that you can consume them. So sprouting, things like that. Okay, so heal your gut. We do this by eliminating a lot of these foods that have this silent inflammation trigger. Okay? Guess what? These foods are normally safe in the spectrum of paleo. Of all autoimmune diseases, I'm reading to you again. Studies all appear to present with intestinal permeability, which means leaky gut. Correlation? Maybe. However, I suggest, and Rob does as well, I did a little screenshot. Just do a Google. Read some peer-reviewed research. Okay? See what you think. You can come to your own deductions. Everybody loves a good meme. Okay, nutrition. We'll keep working on it. Sacrilegious ties to food. It's a pun. Sacrilegious ties to food. Okay? I mentioned this earlier. We need to reframe our moral attachment to food. Do you guys really, does food cheat on you? You don't have a relationship with food. You eat food. You can't cheat on a sweet potato with an ice cream sundae. The sweet potato doesn't know, I promise. I promise, it doesn't know. Okay? Here's Rob's 4 rules. You can't cheat with food, you eat food. So take off the CH. There are consequences to what we put down that entry port, exit port. We need to know them. That is it. Release and remove and demystify all this misunderstanding you have about food. I love the cat. The cat knows it. He's like, I regret nothing. I know what the consequences are. As he has that piece of cake or something. And I thought the little boy was hilarious because it's a perfect embodiment of how I feel when I eat poorly. Okay? Nutrition, let's talk about the paleo diet. Who's heard of the paleo diet before today? Everybody. Most everybody, right? Tell me this. Did you ever have the perception that it was eat meat, eat only meat? It was like a ramped up version of Atkins. General perception, right? That is the furthest thing from the truth. But sadly, caveman, everybody thinks hunting with a spear, dragging one behind you, and rape, pillage, and plunder. That's not what we want. Okay, it's never been that way. It's just a misunderstanding, and it's unfortunate. So that's argument number 1. It's definitely not that. It's meats, fish, nuts and seeds, fruits and vegetables, whole foods, one ingredient, real food. Okay? You've heard this too. What about calcium? If you're not doing dairy, how will I ever have bones? And other nutrient deficiencies, they are covered. If you eat a broad range of these foods, magnesium has actually been shown to be even better for bone health than calcium. Has anyone ever heard of Dr. Matt Lalonde? I said Rob's one of the heroes of nutrition. He's another one of my heroes of nutrition. He is brilliant. Okay, I studied him in a different way. But he's a professor at Harvard, so if that credential means a thing to you. He did a food study in which he studied, I think it was thousands and thousands of types of food to determine the nutrient density. Okay, and that doesn't mean fat, carbs, protein. That means what are the vitamins? What's in there that's really beneficial to me? Okay? And in his list, of course, he developed the top 10 nutrient-dense food list. Organ meats. No, not everybody likes to eat liver and things of that nature, but that's the number 1 most nutrient-dense food. Number 1. Herbs and spices. Do you guys think there's any correlation between why we use spices on our food? They're rich in nutrients. Not only are they very flavorful, but they add so much value to the food that you're eating. Chicken is one thing. Do you put chicken, put some rosemary, put some thyme, and some basil, oregano, whatever, ask these chefs over here what they use. And you're not only adding flavor, but you're adding richness. Stuff that you can absorb, stuff your body will thrive on. Cacao, you know what that is? That's how you make chocolate. Yeah. Dark chocolate, you know like dark chocolate? I'm talking about really dark chocolate, like 80 and higher percentage. Super rich, antioxidants. Beef. Remove the horns from the beef. It's no longer terrible for you. Never has been. Guess what? The F-duh told us it was. Okay? Pork. Swine. Are you kidding me? Really healthy. Eggs. If anybody wants eggs today, by the way, Paris generously provides us with natural, local, free-range chicken eggs. Guess what? All these foods they fit under paleo. And of all the foods you study, this includes bread, this includes dairy, this includes all of it, McDonald's even. Of all those foods that he studied, the top 10 involve these foods, which are all mainstays in paleo. Make sense? Anybody familiar with the term agnostic? It means I don't have enough opinion to really make a decision. It's really, paleo, if you will, is macronutrient agnostic. Some of you guys count your calories, weigh every single thing in your food. I'm not looking at you with a judgmental eye. I'm just letting you know that what you're eating matters as much as how much you're eating. Okay? I will reference number 7 because I love it. And I think quality matters as much as quantity, whether it be food, whether it be exercise, whether it be what you read, whether it be relationships that you have with people. Quality trumps quantity every time, forever, and always. I feel like that's a law of nature. Okay? Paleo foods. How do we say we heal? Or how do we prevent all these diseases? We control our inflammation and we minimize our blood glucose, right? Guess what? Paleo foods, by nature, do this for us. Questions? Anybody want to interrupt me? Please do. Okay, so we've covered nutrition. I told you that there were 4 pillars. Nutrition, movement, community, and recovery, right? Here's our second one, movement. You guys do this already. By the way, who wants to be an old person breakdancing? I do. I think that'd be fantastic. Let's go breakdance now. Yeah, of course. Tom does comes in here dancing on the wall all the time. The number 1 predictor, or one of the leading predictors of longevity, is the amount of muscle mass we hold in our older age. You guys remember the Tempo 30X1? Guess what that is designed to do? Increase muscle hypertrophy. You heard us say that before. Okay? So, keep training. You guys are already doing it. Find things you enjoy and do them often. If it is a chore now, and you do it for 6 years, how do you think you feel about it? Probably still be a chore. It needs to be fun at first if you want it to be fun and enduring in an enduring way. Do this stuff not only because it's good for you, but because it adds to the quality of your life. Okay? Yes?
So, I've been coming almost 5 years. And the reason I keep coming is a guy my age can work is fun. I work all the time. This is fun.
Makes me happy to hear that. Warms my soul.
That's why I come. I mean, I'm happy with the workout. But somebody says to me, why are you going to say because it's fun?
Why else would you do it?
Right.
You're choosing to do this.
Correct.
And in fact, and this is another tangent, we want, and this is selfish probably, but it's our goal for this. We want the hour that you spend with us to be one of the best hours of your day, if not the best. That's our goal. And if we're failing that, let me know. Also, for all you Star Trek fans, live long and prosper. Put that in the corner. Anybody know that reference? I'm sure you do. Movement, yeah, but what are we supposed to do then, right? Of course we do movement. Most days, move. Do as many things as you can. Who has a Fitbit? Who has a step counter? What's the normal goal on there? 10,000 steps. Is that exhausting? No. So it's a good start. If you're not in the gym, if you want to just begin moving and become primal and live a life that's hopefully more rewarding, start by doing something. You guys are doing this already. A few days a week, do a full body resistance training program. AKA, lift something, whether it be your body or a barbell or a kettlebell. You guys have that base covered, right? This is easy. Rob uses the term froggy. I think that's funny. A few days or occasionally get a little froggy. We got a little froggy yesterday, right? We jumped, we rode, we did some stuff with some intensity. And I wish Phil and Mary were here because he was talking to me the other day about reading an article in the Scientific Journal about reprogramming your cellular ability to produce energy. And again, without jumping into all the weird stuff, mitochondria, you guys heard of that? Mitochondria is like the little engine of each cell that we have. When we do intense training, interval training, if you will, high intensity interval training, you guys have heard all these buzzwords. It kind of rewires these mitochondria that have silently slipped into a slumber. Okay, so again, base covered for you guys. And then Angie's done the rest, and Steve too. A few days each week, do some kind of stretching, aka mobility, aka, where is it? Yoga. Are you doing this already? If you're here, you are, generally. I like that dog. Made me laugh. Let's talk about recovery. You reap what you sow, or not, in this case, you reap what you don't sleep. If you sleep poorly, you guys remember gut permeability? You're impairing your gut's ability to be healthy, which adds to systemic inflammation, impairs our immune function. What's autoimmunity? The immune system turns on itself, right? So right off the bat, if you're not sleeping, cards are kind of stacked against you. Alters anabolic hormones. What is a sign of living long? Muscle mass. You guys remember that? So if our hormones aren't right to allow us to develop this muscle and this output that we're using, we don't have the ability to grow our muscle. It also causes cravings. We talked about that a little bit earlier. If you're a little bit sleep deprived and somebody puts the cupcake in front of you on Monday morning when you're already in a really bad mood, do you think you have as much capacity to resist? How about Sour Patch Kids?
My days are all chips.
And for me, this is hugely noticeable. Sometimes I'm in here and I'm falling over every word that I say. I can't put together a complete sentence. It really impairs your ability to cogitate or think. Okay? And that dog, you look at it, he's like, man, I'm so tired, I want to sleep, but my eyes are open. He can't even walk. How do you repair your sleep? Have you ever heard of the term sleep hygiene? Okay, so we have hygiene where you brush your teeth, wash your face, shower. Hopefully you did that today. We need to develop a hygiene habit, just like you would with anything else. Okay? Here are the 7 rules that Rob suggests. Sunlight. Remember we mentioned that earlier. Exercise and do it in the sun. The sun helps really reset our circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm, again, in a nutshell, is generally, before all this technology took over and before I could do a presentation on a computer simultaneously, we woke up when the sun went up, and we went to bed when the sun went down. Now we have electricity, we're up doing presentations, we're stressed out, we're staring at this thing all day. Okay? So if we want to kind of hedge our bets against a technologically based society, we need to be in the sun. If you can't be in the sun, and I have this from the mouth of the beast. I actually messaged Rob Wolf one time in the doldrums of winter. It was like January and everything's gray and I'm depressed. I didn't want to be here. I was throwing a pity party. And I messaged Rob Wolf and I said, how do I overcome this? And he said, try a tanning bed for 5 minutes or less, okay? And it will help you, it'll kind of like stimulate the production of vitamin D. So, sunlight, perfect time of year right now. You should be in the sun as much as you can. Even if you're not outside exercising, you're in the sun, pull your sleeves up. Give your skin some exposure to sun, okay? Number 1. Number 2, who sleeps in a dark room? Could it be darker? You have clocks glowing and phones plugged in and cracks in the window where the light from outside is coming in. Fix that if you can. Cool, and we mean really cool. That's cold, right? That's nice. Who sleeps better in the winter? Yeah, we typically have a more restful sleep when our atmosphere is cooler. Okay, so cool and dark both. Keep a journal. Who lays down at night and thinks, oh, punch list, there are things I have to do as soon as I wake up? Me. I ruminate a lot. Okay, Tristan can tell you, I'm a pretty busy brain. You guys may know that already. So keep a journal, and before you go to bed, develop a habit of making a list of stuff that you need to do. Finish it, close your journal, lights out. Speaking of lights out, have you ever read that book, Lights Out?
Yeah, me too.
She's crazy, Brandon.
Yeah, Jess, I feel you. It's a Leo thing. It's a Leo thing. Buy a good mattress. A few years ago, again, if you guys have been with us for a while, you may remember when I hurt my back really bad. Anybody remember that? Barely walked, couldn't train for about 7 months. I attribute part of that injury to a really worn mattress. I would lay down and be like I was in a hollow. You know the hollow rock? That's how I sleep. Okay? Buy a good mattress. It is invaluable. Baby and I did this right at the same time. It has been the best investment. I pay $100 a month for my mattress that I probably never paid for, but I don't care. Because it was completely worth it. It is probably the best investment I've ever made. Contrast showers. You guys ever done this before? I actually started this back in January. It's been a struggle. Okay, so it's hot and cold. Or, and the way that I do it, the way I gently wade it into the water is I will take my shower, normal, hot, warm, whatever, and for the last 60 seconds, as cold as I can. Set my watch and I'm Tristan can hear me breathing. When I'm in the shower. Promise, it's innocent breathing. Sorry. That helps regulate your ability to calm, kind of put your body in a calm state. Believe it or not, cold makes you calm down. When bears hibernate, what happens to their internal temperature? They sleep. Same principle. Stick to a schedule. This is more of the hygiene thing than anything else. If you were 8 years old, likely, you have bedtime routine? Did your mom make you stick to it? Thanks for cooperating. Pretend like you have instituted a bedtime for yourself. Okay? If bedtime's 10 o'clock, stick to it. You're an adult. Be accountable to your own rule. Okay? Live in your truth, as I tell my coaches a lot. Live in your own truth. And finally, stabilize your blood sugar. And we'll talk about that, other than nutrition. 90% rule. This is really interesting to me. Rob said he could have written the entire book in 2 paragraphs. If you can fix this part of your life, sleep, you have so much more latitude in every other arena. Meaning, if I'm sleeping really well and in tune with the way that I'm programmed to sleep, I could probably eat a lot worse. I could probably endure a lot more stress because I'm able to recover during these periods of recovery. Okay? So if you take nothing more from today, then I need to sleep better and I need to have a sleep hygiene habit. Take that with you, run with it, put it in your pocket. It is as true as it's hot. Also, I thought that was a pretty funny meme. I like to sleep because it's like being dead without the minute. Okay, so we talked about vitamin D. So I want to talk a little bit about supplementation, but not much. I don't think it's really worth digging into too much. Food should be the source of 99% of our nutrition. Supplement, by the nature of the word, means to add to, not to replace. Okay, so you supplement nutrition with things that you are unable to consume. Okay? If you're not able to lay in a tanning bed, or if it's freezing cold outside and cloudy, like right now, it's not cold, you can supplement vitamin D. In fact, I would suggest supplementing with vitamin D. I started taking recently again, because again, I needed a gentle scratch to remind me. Vitamin D, 2 to 4,000 IUs of vitamin D. It is not expensive. Okay? Here's the kicker though, with vitamin D, you can't just take it. You must take it with a meal containing fat or a fat vehicle, if you will. It is fat soluble, which means if you don't consume it with some fat, you won't absorb it. Just pass right on through. Remember the stuff that lives between the port and the exit? That stuff is better able to utilize these vitamins when we have fat with it. Okay, so we can absorb it. And then we talked about in that last slide, stabilizing your sugar. You can do that with nutrition, but you can also do that if you want to bolster your ability to have success with this stuff called magnesium citrate. Tristan and I just started it this week.
Yeah.
And your experience is?
I'm sleeping a lot. It seems like a lot deeper. I'm not waking up, even though Todd wants it.
So 200 to 400 milligrams. It's, again, not very cheap. I think I bought it, or not very expensive, $14. And it's 2 pills. And it'll last us for the
I
better part
think
of
I
the week.
noticed it the first night, but I thought, well, it's probably silly. But
Yeah, power placebo is real too, right? And then you have a little guy, all the vitamins. We talked about stress. Let's really dig into this a little bit. And I've used this analogy with some of you guys already. The stress cup spilleth over. We can endure only finite amounts of stress. In other words, every day there is a limit. There's capacity, like a gas tank, of the amount of stress that we can use. Don't beat yourself up over if it's outside your levels of control. Okay, so the analogy is, here's your cup. There is a capacity to what that cup can hold, and we can fill it with all sorts of things. Stress isn't bad inherently. Anybody ever heard of the idea of anti-fragility, like a plant? The plant lives in this like perfect biome for its whole life, and you expose it to one bit of stress, it'll die. Right? So that's what we want to do. We want to become anti-fragile. We do this by controlling the amount of stress that we expose ourselves to, if you will. Okay, and you can see there's poor sleep, which we just talked about, bad diet we talked about, work stress, exercise is a stress. It's a good one, but it can be too much. If you're not sleeping, you're not eating, and you're in here running yourself into the floor. Okay? Manage that, control that, know. And sometimes it's hard to step away from our life and take an objective view and see what we've been doing and cast a judgmental eye on our lifestyle, right? But if we can hone that awareness, we will be much more likely to notice success. Community, the 4th pillar. Here's an interesting aside. We all know this. Smoking, drinking, carrying too many pounds. Is that a healthy habit? Is that a healthy lifestyle? Probably not. But did you know the power of social connection? It's hilarious. Social isolation is a clinical term. We just call it lonely. It's nice to have connections. We are a community-driven, relationship-based organism. I mentioned it earlier. That's how we communicate. That's how we develop the modern world, with language, talking, and collaborative efforts with other beings like ourselves. We need to have touches with people, and we need to have real touches with people, not this nonsense on social media where we're just seeking approval and seeking likes and seeking this attention that is, for lack of better terms, not even real. Okay? Again, you guys kind of plugged into a pretty strong community here, not me. I think we're a pretty good, strong group of individuals. So, loving relationships, very important. Don't smoke. Have a hug instead. Simon Says. Does anyone ever listen to the TED Talks by Simon Sinek? And it's about finding your why. I know Steve has. Rob says it too. So first, and it's kind of a little target here, we start inside the target, we start working our way out. We have to start with why. We have to know what our story is. Otherwise, there's no narrative for us to follow. Why are we making this change? Who are you to begin with? What are your goals? Are you here to lose weight? Are you here to improve your health? Are you pre-diabetic? Are you insulin resistant? Are you diabetic now? Are you here to improve your performance? All these things make our steering along this journey of whatever fitness is to you unique. Okay? And how do we make it happen? Well, anybody ever heard that term, or the saying, know thyself, Oracle of Delphi? That's her there on the coin, by the way. Not just put it around. So we first have to know why we're doing this. And then we have to know where we start. Otherwise, we're just shooting in the dark. So we need to take metrics before we start this whole change, which I finally will get to, I promise. And we do this by, according to Rob, taking a ratio of our hips to our waist, knowing what our blood pressure is, knowing our blood glucose levels, and cholesterol. Hip to waist ratio. This isn't caliper pinch, so don't worry. Okay, this is simply measuring your waist and measuring your hips at their widest point. Our waist, if we're healthy-ish, should be smaller than our hips. Okay? And again, I don't expect you guys to remember these numbers, but you can see excellent, good, average, at risk. I'll send this out to you in an email. Okay? So number one, kind of find out where we stand on that spectrum of excellent to at risk based on a percentage of waist to hips. I'll say it again. Talk to your doctor. Blood pressure matters. Hypertension. Right? And Emily probably explains it better, and all you medical people can explain it better. But hypertension is a common and early indication of insulin resistance. Does anybody know what insulin resistance is? Yeah. Your pancreas stops responding to the food that you're eating, and insulin is essentially a storing hormone that is dysregulated by the food that we eat in our lifestyle. Okay, sleep, stress, all that stuff. As insulin, this is what I'll read to you, levels increase, aldosterone, how do I pronounce that? Aldosterone? Yeah, aldosterone. Okay, sorry. Increases. When that increases, we retain water. You guys ever heard of the salt and blood pressure connection? There's some correlation. We retain water. We have more water in our body. The pressure on our blood vessels and our vascular beds increases. Okay? This worsens the whole process. It damages the kidneys, damages the heart. But if our diet involves a level of carbs that works for you, it instantly, well not instantly, but rapidly can decrease that water retention, and it can also relate to a lower blood pressure. Okay? Blood pressure continued, here's the numbers. Remember, normal, according to FDA, USDA, and all these between 120 and 180, you have diastolic and systolic, right? One over the other. You can see the numbers that are healthy. Again, I'll send these out. If you guys want to take pictures, you can too. Any questions on this so far? Normal, pre-hypertension, hypertension 1, hypertension 2. Bad news. Diabetes, or the beatus. I really want to put a picture of the cat, but I don't have any room. You guys know the cat? Like grumpy cat talking about diabetes. Remember, good or sweet, not a doctor here. Okay? It is not always a simple yes or no. It's not a binary code. So it's not like what a computer will say, 0 or 1. The tests do not always lend themselves to easy answers. The most effective way to reverse this condition, though, is, like I mentioned before, reduce the amount of glucose you put in your body, or sugar, or carbs. Okay, those are all kind of like interchangeable terms. This means maybe a low carb version for people, or maybe qualitative, or the quality over quantity shift in carbs for others. So in other words, you guys tell me, if I'm eating carbs and I'm looking at Stephen Rose, I can eat Sour Patch or I can eat a sweet potato. Do you think there's a difference in the way our body responds to this? Likely. Okay? And again, I'm not picking on them, they're just easy to point at. Okay? Again, you can determine where we want to determine what our glucose is. You can determine it through 3 tests. Jess could probably explain this better than me. You have your A1C, you have your fasting plasma. So you fast and you take a blood sample, and then you have oral glucose, which is what they do a lot of times pre-pregnancy, right? Or pregnancy. Yeah. And then you can see your numbers. Again, normal is sometimes erring on sick. Guess what? Cholesterol matters too. Reminder, still not a doctor. Hurrah! 3 things you should really, really dig into. Total cholesterol, HDL, LDL, high density, low density. Triglycerides, Rob likes to see them between 50 and 100. Normal, of course, is around 150. Those are milligrams per deciliter and millimoles per liter. Okay, normal, borderline, high, very high. You can, again, just internalize the numbers or take a screenshot, make a note once you have these metrics to begin with. Also, what I found was interesting, LDL-P. You guys ever measure this now?
We use C&D.
Yeah, so P, kind of a newer study, or not study, but test, measures the number of particles that actually carry cholesterol. And again, you have your healthy ranges, okay? So I thought that was interesting, LDL-P, I never heard of either. Are we there yet? Almost. So here's where we begin. We begin with what we call our 30-day resets. Eating paleo, go paleo. You guys have heard of that before. It's really hard. You guys ready? Hard rules to follow. 3 meals a day. Not hard, right? Hopefully you're eating 3 meals a day. Every meal should contain 4 to 6 ounces of protein, 75 to 150 grams of varied carbohydrate, paleo carbohydrate sources, and fat for flavor. Really, really complex. The nut dilemma. Has anybody ever experienced the nut dilemma when they've done paleo? I did. I started eating paleo in 2009. I was like, God, this is awesome. I can eat all the nuts I want. I would eat like in excess of a can a day of cashews or almonds. And essentially, I thought this was a healthy habit. And it's like 3,000 extra calories. I can't figure out why I'm putting weight on. It's no big deal. Okay? So remember the nut dilemma. And some people would even say and argue that you don't need to have nuts. But we won't dig into that. Hedge your bets. This is the whole point of the picture. Clean out your pantry, your fridge, your freezer. The whole know thyself mantra comes in here, and it comes in handy in here as well. Personally, if Trista buys some junky food, she can tell you that it won't last more than a day. So I call her the demise of all my nutritional aspirations. If you know that you have trigger foods, chips, the salty crunchy, there's your hyperpalatability for me. If you know that foods to you are like the gateway, here I am, take off running, now we're just sliding downhill. If you know that those are your trigger foods, eliminate it, throw them away, give them away, whatever. There's maybe some ethical dilemmas about giving them away because you're giving away poison. But Rob says, if you don't want to fight, don't go to a biker bar. There's your local biker bar. They're in Del Rio. Okay? There's another picture of a bored dog. I was like, man, you're boring me too. But we're wired to eat. This food is boring. I won't be prone to eating this food that I know I'm not really attracted to. Right? I already talked about who knows what OFS means? Optimal
Origin.
strategy. PF, Palaf T. Here's what Rob suggests, and I think it's amazing. He has this food matrix. And essentially you have proteins on the left, you have vegetables or carb sources. Second on the left, you have fats, you have herbs and spices. If you choose one from each column, guess what? You can create a meal. You can even choose 2 if you want. You want to be really wild and crazy. But if you do the math, this is 81,000 combinations of healthy food that you could eat, and really forever. Who can tell me that they eat more than, we'll say 10 as a baseline? 10 different meals. I know I don't. Tristan and I eat, it's like a continuing cycle of the same food seasonally. Have this tonight or have this tonight? Well, I'll have that again. Okay. Are you guys the same way? don't have to have tons of variety. You have to have stuff that you like, just like exercise. Make sure you enjoy what you eat, and then remove morality from it. All right, phase 1. Rob calls this his Gooks pitch, greasy used car salesman. It did sound kind of greasy, fat and goop. He says, try the 30-day reset, which is the paleo diet, and then be objective and subjective. See how you look, see how you feel, see how you perform. Okay? Check your blood pressure. Make a note of your waist to hip ratio. Do some basic blood work for the glucose stuff. If you want, you don't have to. And then, critically, read the text message. Evaluate your results. Decide if your time investment, your effort investment, do they outweigh the cost? So that's phase 1. 30 days, 3 meals a day, 4 to 6 ounces of protein, 75 to 150 carbs that are in that safe range, and some fat and flavor. 30 days. Does that sound really hard? Sleep. Exercise. Then, and only then, should you begin what he calls phase 2. And this is where we kind of vary from what we wrote about, or what I wrote about in the article when he talked about Paleo FX. This is really interesting to me because I'm a nerd. This is what he calls a 7-day carb test. You need to buy these. Taryn's already done this. I wish he were here. A blood glucose monitor. Gosh, I'm struggling. Hate that. You can do this at Walmart. I think he said he bought one for $20. But Rob will have a living, organic, and always changing resource for you on his website, wired2eat/monitor, robwolf.com, blah, blah, blah. Okay? So, obtain one way or talk to someone who may have access to one. Okay? I bet you have one. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And yes, from the picture, you will have to prick your finger unless you want to buy a really expensive wearable type. Okay? That's step 1. Step 2, download a meal tracker. Everybody has smartphones. Some people have the devices on their watch, like Apple Nutrition or MyFitnessPal, MyMacros Plus. There's a bunch of them. Steve can probably tell you the easiest ones to use, where you can just scan what you're eating. So we need to know what we're eating and observe how our body responds. That's step 1. Step 2, this is the fun part. I think this is like the actual scientific experiment. After your 30 days, for the next week, at breakfast, so after you fasted, if possible, you'll eat and eat exclusively 50 grams of carbs of a singular source. Okay? So if I were to do this, I've done my 30-day test, or reset, if you will. On Monday the following week, I'll eat 50 grams of oatmeal, or 50 grams. It could be anything, as long as it's 50 grams. The net effect is 50 grams. Okay? Set a timer when you're finished eating. Take your blood sugar 2 hours later. Okay? What we'd like to see is a blood sugar level between 90 and 115. Okay? That tester will show you, the monitor will tell you exactly what that is. If you happen to be high, guess what? That's a food you're sensitive to. And guess what? We're all relatively unique in the way that we respond to our food. Personally, I can do wheat, I can do gluten. But if I do beans or corn or dairy, that kind of stuff just ruins me. My brain doesn't work, I can't speak, I can't talk, I can't sleep well, I'll have water. Okay, so this is where we really drill in to who we are as an individual and our animal and our gut, also our gut as well, and see what foods are our hot buttons and what foods are safe zones. Okay? Doesn't mean you can or can't do them, but really what we want to develop is an awareness of the foods that might cause that habit that we've discussed so far.
Suggesting you do a different carb.
Yes, different carb every day. So day 1 could be oatmeal, day 2 could be bananas, day 3 could be gluten-free bread, day 4 could be done.
But 50 grams carb.
Exactly. I do mean that. I definitely do. But you really, I think there's 5 tables to reference. So for example, if you want to do white rice, you could see that it is 1 and almost 1/4 cups to have the 50 grams. You wanted to do buckwheat or gluten-free bread or whatever. There's your legumes, so there's your lentils, iris, black beans, pinto beans, any of that. But you want to do, again, you can see how much you'd have to eat too. 2 cups of lentils, quite a bit. It'd be a lot. That didn't cost me cut stuff for me. I don't know what would. Not to say it's good or bad. You can do fruit. Apples, applesauce, cherries, melons, more fruit. Mangoes, these are your sweeter type fruits. You can do vegetables, potato, sweet potato, all that. But again, these are just your quick references. If you don't want to weigh and measure everything, you can say, okay, I need exactly 1.5 cups of yam. Which is
Hey, Galen, would you say it's probably a good idea, once you reach that step to do the foods that you know you're going to want to eat.
Absolutely.
So you.
Or you can experiment. You have 7 days. So I would suggest seven different foods. If there's a food that you really want, but you notice, so you eat your food, you set your timer 2 hours later, you take your blood, and it's a bit high, you can retest that food at half portion, 25 grams instead of 50, and see if you have the similar, or just if it was just kind of an outlying response. Okay? But this is really where we start to drill into, hey, Rob, for example, Rob Wolf, if he eats white rice, he says he's almost like, his vision blurs, he can't think, he almost becomes type 2 diabetic after a cup of rice. Some of us are really sensitive to it, some of us aren't. And really it's about finding out which foods that we're sensitive to, okay, and how we particularly are wired to eat. Let's talk a little bit more about autoimmunity and therapeutic nutrition. Ketosis, anybody ever heard of that? Do you eat ketogenic?
No, there's a part of diabetes that's called diabetic ketoacidosis.
Right, that's when things are way out of whack. Way out of whack. Pat and I just talked about that the other day. Ketosis is essentially it's a fuel swap for your body. We run primarily on glucose if we're eating carbs, glycogen. Ketosis flips a switch and allows us to work with ketones, which is kind of like a fat source of energy. It is a low-grade stress, aka hormesis. It's kind of like dually effective. It helps kill, I know this sounds like a really extreme term, apoptosis. Death of cells. Yeah, bad cells. Maybe ones that could turn into cancer, that grow just for growth's sake. Okay? It helps kind of flush and rid ourselves of that. Some people who eat keto will say that they have just like enlightenment all the time. Really clear thoughts, mental acuity is ratcheted up by many degrees. I'm not saying you should or you shouldn't, but if you're interested in ketogenic diet or ketosis, I think that it yields a lot of bounty. I used to do intermittent fasting, which is essentially one time a week or periodically just have a period without food. Studies have shown, again, you have to Google it, that it can be anti-aging, it can be anti-cancer-ish. Did you ever do fasting? Okay. Brian does it now, right? You're doing intermittent fasting. So you eat for 8 hours a day and you fast for 16 hours a day, right? It kind of, again, rewires our relationship with food and a lot of other things. Also, shows that periods of scarcity, remember we mentioned that anti-fragility earlier, can have really long-lasting healthy effects on us. Okay? Nothing drops blood glucose levels better than a ketogenic diet and or fasting. Sorry, that was an hour and 7 minutes. That's all he wrote. You don't have to take my word for it. Buy the book. I really want questions. If you guys have any questions, I'd love to try to field some, fumble them around. Maybe not. Any questions? Was that valuable in any way? By the